a little walk to the edge of town and go across the track where the viaduct looms like a bird of doom as it ships.
What's up, nerds and nerdettes? Tyler Mack from the 30 Nerdy Podcast here to talk about Scream 5. Scream 5. Just got out of the movie. Took Madison. This was her first horror movie in a theater. And it meant a lot, first off, because it's my favorite slasher franchise. Might have a lot to do with the fact that I was raised watching it. Came out in the 90s. That was my era that I loved horror. And something more real about it than other slashers that are popular. So, just a forewarning, some of this review is going to have some spoilers floating around. So, if you haven't seen Scream 5 yet, please go see it before you watch this or listen to this. Let's start out first off. I loved the requel aspect of it. And I loved the meta jokes that were made. There were quite a few references to requels, and nobody wants a reboot, but you can't just continue with the sequel without the legacy characters. So, kudos to that. I loved the toxic fandom jokes that were made, and especially hints towards the Star Wars franchise. If you haven't seen it, then you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you have, then you definitely do, and I'm sure you laughed just as much as I did. Scream is my favorite franchise in the slasher genre, and I would consider slasher, obviously, up there with things like Freddy and Jason, Michael, I Know What You Did Last Summer, all those things. Those are slashers in my mind. And Scream's always been my favorite. There's something about Ghostface. There's something about the thought of being stalked and called, and the person being in the house. When a stranger calls, stuff like that stuff. But what makes this scary is this isn't a stranger. It's always their friends. It's in the group. It's somebody in the group of friends. And there's something very meta about that, in the aspect that in the real world, there's always this moment, this especially in high school and early college, where somebody in your group of friends, your clique, if you will, goes awry. I'm not saying that they call you and stalk you and kill you every time. Certainly not. But, either they change or the group grows distant. So it plays, I love how it plays on that. It's always someone you know. It's always someone you know. And speaking of new characters here, the new leads are great. The new supporting characters in the franchise are great. The spin of it, that again, if you haven't seen Scream 5, I'm about to spoil something massive. The fact that the lead girl is Billy Loomis's illegitimate child. Bravo. Fantastic. I marked out massively when that little bit of news was dropped. And speaking of Billy, the essence of Billy kind of haunting her, talking to her in the mirror, stuff like that, her taking the antipsychotics, and it being Skeet, and he's in the outfit that he was in the first one when he died. He's in the white shirt, and he's got the bullet holes and the cuts and the stuff like that, and it being Skeet Ulrich, today's Skeet Ulrich. It's not CG, it's not them dubbing in moments that and putting his lines together and stuff like that. It's him, and he returned to do it. And I told Maddie when when the movie was almost over, during the credits or near the end, I said I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall with the reunion of Nev Campbell and Skeet Ulrich, because they started this thing, and Nev is back, and Sydney is back, and Gail Weathers is back, and Dewey's back, and Randy is memorialized. It's kind of like he's been in most all of them in some form or fashion, whether live action or a video on the third one, like a postmortem cameo. And in this, it's very in memoriam. It's paying respect to him, which Randy's my favorite character, because the joke was always made growing up when all of my friends started watching these movies, is that I was the Randy of the group. And I was like, well, at least I'd survived the first instance, but hope there's never a sequel, because obviously I wouldn't survive. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't ever give any, I rarely give things a 10 out of 10. And there were some things I thought could have been done different, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. My prediction did not hold out. My dream requel, if you will, is the return of Stu. Like, he survived the TV falling on him. I know it's ridiculous to think, but I mean, come on, it's fiction. It's a horror franchise. Michael and Jason can keep coming back. Why not Stu survive the TV falling on him? He could be all cut up and stuff like that, and even crazier than he already was. There was a moment in the movie that I'm about to talk about that is going to decimate you if you are a true fan of this franchise, and that is the death of Dewey Riley. He does not limp away from this one. And I called it, if you follow me personally on Facebook, months ago, after the first trailer dropped. I said, Scream fans need to be ready to say goodbye to at least one of the three. And I personally would have been less upset if it were Gail, because out of the trio, she's my least favorite. Just because I love Dewey, but the point that was made, Dewey was the hero and the innocence, and it's the last of the innocents was killed in this one, and it changed the game, it changed the rules. So it was sad, but as a fan of horror and a fan of good storytelling, it was required, because it kind of brings us into the next echelon. Because obviously this movie in its opening weekend, it's still the number one movie in the world right now, in the country, and it beat Spider-Man No Way Home in its opening weekend. And a horror movie, let alone a slasher, doing that to a comic book movie is huge. First of all, it's massive. I think that it's a good sign and a really good opportunity to have a 6, because Sydney and Gail survive. So if Scream 6 does not see my tale come to fruition, the survival of Stu, I think this franchise will completely end when Sydney has finally snapped and Sydney becomes Ghostface. I think it would be perfect ending when they're ready to end it. There was, of course, a great tribute right after the movie ended for Wes, because this is the first Scream since Wes Craven died, and it was really good. It was really cool for Wes, and it's in the Scream font, and you could tell that the writers and the crew and the cast were fans of the original franchise and Wes Craven in general. There were a lot of Wes-isms in there still, even with him gone. So bravo and kudos to the cast and crew. I'm obviously not going to go too much into a deep dive with this. I'm not going to go word for word, moment by moment, but the deaths were all big. Whether it was shock value of like instant, like oh my god, or there was one death that was pretty minor near the beginning that you were kind of like, who cares? We just met this guy. But there's a few deaths where you're just like, whoa, I did not see that coming. Obviously, Sheriff Judy, Officer Judy is back in this one from Scream 4. So I highly recommend it. I'm not going to sit here. I've made some shocking declarations that happened. Some spoilers. I hope that you, if you haven't seen it, I really hope that you didn't stay through this video. I really hope that if you're a fan of Scream, if you're a fan of horror, if you're not, then you probably stayed around and you got the story from me. I left out the killers. I really don't want to spoil that aspect, because even though I spoiled the fact that Loomis's kid is in it, and there's obviously in the trailer, it even drops that the kids are somehow related to the original movie. They're either the nephews or kids or cousins of. So that's a really cool spin. I loved the movie. I hope to go see it again. I don't have a whole lot of horror fans in my group of friends, sadly, so I was really happy that Maddie came. The thing that shocked me the most was, this is my favorite slasher franchise, and I said, it's perfect that your first horror movie in the theaters is my favorite slasher franchise, and it's Scream and it's Ghostface. And she said, yeah, it is also perfect that the first one came out the year I was born. So if you're in your 30s, you're welcome for that. Great movie, guys. Bravo to the cast and crew. Thank you for a great movie. I look forward to the news coming out of it. I look forward to the success of the movie. It's obviously very near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait to see what comes next of the Scream franchise. What's your favorite scary